My brother stole my house while I was away. This is my house. I worked for 15 years to call it my own. But 3 months ago, I had to hire a lawyer to legally evict my own brother from it. I never, ever thought the person I grew up with, my own flesh and blood, would betray me by stealing my home while I was away. This is the story of how I found out what he did, and the insane legal battle I had to go through just to get my life back. It all started with a dream. Not the kind you have when you're asleep, but the kind that wakes you up and drives you every single morning. For me, that dream was a home. Not just a place to live, but a sanctuary. A space that was completely and totally mine. I'm an architect, so I spend my days designing spaces for other people, bringing their visions to life. For myself, though, I just wanted something simple. Something earned. I spent my 20s and early 30s working 60-hour weeks, taking every project I could get and saving every penny. I didn't take fancy vacations. I drove a 10-year-old car. I packed my own lunch. Every little sacrifice was a brick in the foundation of my future. Finally, after 15 years of grinding, I did it. I bought a house. It wasn't a mansion, but to me it was everything. A modest 2-bedroom bungalow with a small yard, valued at around $450,000. I still remember the day I got the keys. Their weight in my hand felt more real than any award or promotion I'd ever gotten. This was it. This was all that work made real. I spent the next year making it perfect. I painted the walls my favorite shade of slate gray. I installed bookshelves that groaned under the weight of my collection. I planted a garden in the backyard. This house wasn't just wood and drywall, it was part of me. So, to understand how this all went so wrong, you need to understand my brother, David. He's 2 years younger, and for as long as I can remember, our lives have been on two totally different tracks. Growing up, I was the planner, the responsible one. David was the free spirit, the guy who lived in the moment. I don't say that with judgment, not entirely anyway. There was a charm to his spontaneity, and a part of me almost envied his ability to just let life happen. But as we got older, his spontaneity started to look a lot more like irresponsibility. He bounced from job to job, never sticking with anything for more than a few months. There was always an excuse: a bad boss, a boring routine, a better opportunity that never quite panned out. He was perpetually in between things. In between jobs, in between apartments, in between relationships. And I was always the one he called. Hey, can I borrow a few $100? Just till my next paycheck. Hey, my landlord's being a jerk, can I crash on your couch for like a week? And I always said yes, because he's my brother. You're supposed to be there for your family, right? I'd lend him money I knew I'd never see again. I'd let him stay for a week, that always turned into a month. My parents would just sigh and say, that's just David. We enabled him, I see that now. We built this cozy safety net around him so he never had to learn how to fly on his own. But even with all the frustration, I loved him. Underneath all the flakiness was the kid I built forts with, the guy who taught me how to ride a bike. I believed, or maybe I just desperately wanted to believe, that one day he'd get it together. Then the opportunity of a lifetime landed in my lap. My firm got a huge international project. A new museum in Berlin. They needed someone on site for 3 months to oversee the initial phase. This was a massive step for my career, the exact kind of thing I'd been working for. There was no question. I had to go. The only problem was my house. My sanctuary. I was worried about leaving it empty for that long. I had a bunch of rare plants that needed watering, and I wanted someone to grab the mail, just so the place looked lived in. My first thought was David. He was, predictably, in between apartments again. I thought, hey, this is perfect. I can do him a favor while he does one for me. I sat him down a week before I left. David, I said, I have a proposition for you. I need a house sitter while I'm in Germany. Just water the plants, get the mail, keep an eye on things. I can't pay you, but it saves you from having to find a place for a few months. His eyes lit up. Seriously? Man, that would be a lifesaver. I was crystal clear. Now listen. You be in the guest room. That's it. The rest of the house is off limits. My office, my bedroom, please just respect my space. I'm trusting you with the most important thing I own. He put on that sincere face, the one he always used when he really wanted something. Dude, of course. You can trust me. I won't let you down. This is my brother's house. I'll treat it like a temple. I handed him a spare key. Just a key to the front door, not the deadbolt. A key I gave him based on a lifetime of shared memories, not on a lifetime of his actual behavior. I chose to believe his words over his actions. It was a mistake that would nearly cost me everything. The first couple of months in Berlin were a total whirlwind. The project was intense but exhilarating. I was working crazy hours, completely immersed in the city and the creative challenge. I talked to David a few times on the phone. Everything was great, he'd say. The plants were thriving. No problems at all. He sounded happy and I was happy for him. It felt like, for the first time, he had a responsibility he was actually taking seriously. The project went so well that we finished the first phase a week early. My boss told me to take the extra week off as a well-deserved break. I was ecstatic. I decided not to tell anyone I was coming home. I pictured the surprise on my parents' faces, on my friends' faces. I even looked forward to surprising David, walking in and thanking him for doing such a good job. The flight home was filled with that quiet, happy feeling of returning to a place you love. As the taxi turned onto my street, I felt that final click of contentment settle in my chest. I was home. But as we pulled up, something felt off. There was a beat-up sedan in my driveway I'd never seen before. Through the front window, I could see the blue flicker of the TV. It was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. A cold knot of confusion started forming in my stomach. Maybe David just had a friend over. That was it. I paid the cab, walked up the path I'd laid myself, and pulled out my key. I put it in the lock. It turned. But the door didn't open. It was stopped by the deadbolt, latched from the inside. Now the knot in my stomach turned to ice. I never use the deadbolt when I'm home. It's just a weird habit. Why was it locked? I knocked. Once, then again. I heard shuffling inside and the TV went quiet. After what felt like forever, the deadbolt slid back and the door cracked open. It was David. He was shirtless in a pair of sweatpants I didn't recognize. His hair was a mess and he had that groggy, just woken up look. "Hey," he mumbled, blinking in the sunlight. "You're back early." "Yeah," I said, my eyes darting past him to the sliver of my living room I could see. "What's going on? Why was the deadbolt locked?" He shrugged, still blocking the doorway. "Oh, just a habit, I guess. Can't be too safe." That's when a woman's voice called from inside. "Davy, who is it?" My blood ran cold. "Davy? Who is that, David?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just let out a long, annoyed sigh and opened the door wider. "Look, man, just come in. We can talk about this." I stepped inside and my whole world tilted sideways. My sanctuary. It was gone. In its place was just chaos. Clothes were thrown over my sofa. A half-eaten pizza sat on my custom-made coffee table. And standing in the middle of the room, wearing one of my bathrobes, was a woman I'd never seen in my life. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the walls. My slate gray walls were covered in cheap, colorful tapestries. My bookshelves had been moved and half my books were gone, replaced with trinkets and video games. A giant, ugly flat-screen TV I'd never seen was mounted where a piece of art used to hang. And my things, my personal belongings, the little things that made the house mine, were gone. I turned to David, my voice barely a whisper. "What did you do?" "Look, don't overreact," he said, holding his hands up. "My girlfriend, Sarah, her lease was up. It was just easier for her to move in here. We were gonna put everything back before you got home." Put everything back. I walked, dazed, towards my office. It was now a makeshift recording studio with soundproofing foam tacked to the walls and a drum kit in the corner. I finally worked up the nerve to look into my bedroom. My bedroom. It was filled with boxes. Boxes of my clothes, my photos, my life. They had packed up my entire life and moved it into my own bedroom to make space for themselves. I felt a rage so pure and hot it almost made me dizzy. I spun back to him. "My bedroom is your storage unit? You moved your girlfriend into my house? You redecorated? What in the world were you thinking?" This is where the story should have ended. This should have been where he apologized, where they packed their bags in shame and got out. But that's not what happened. Instead, the excuses started. "Come on, man, it's not a big deal. You have all this space and you weren't even using it." Sarah, the girlfriend, chimed in. "We were taking care of the place. It's not like we were throwing wild parties. This isn't your place to take care of." I shouted, my voice cracking. "This is my home. You have to leave. Now." David scoffed. He actually scoffed at me. "Be reasonable. We have nowhere to go. Our stuff is here. You can't just kick us out on the street." And in that moment, looking at his defiant, entitled face, I got it. He had no intention of leaving. He wasn't a guest. He wasn't a house sitter. In his mind, this was his house now. He saw my shock and my pain and all he felt was annoyance. I wasn't his brother who he'd betrayed. I was an inconvenience who came home early. The arguments went on for days. I was staying in a cheap motel 10 minutes from my own house. while my brother and his girlfriend were sleeping in my bed. I begged. I reasoned. I yelled. I brought up our history, our family. Nothing worked. His final words to me that week were, "Look, we're here now. If you want us out, you're going to have to make us leave." Legally. Legally. The word just hung there. He said it like a threat, a challenge. He was betting I would never take legal action against my own brother. He was wrong. My hands were shaking with anger and disbelief when I called a friend who's a paralegal. I explained the whole situation. I'll never forget her response. "Oh no," she said softly. "This is messy. Because he's been living there for months and has his stuff there, he has established residency. You can't just change the locks or call the cops for trespassing. If you do, it could be an illegal eviction, and you could be the one in trouble. You basically have to go through the formal legal process to get him out." I was, for all intents and purposes, locked out of my own life, and my brother was holding the key. I was at my wit's end. My own brother had hijacked my life's work, and the law, in some bizarre twist, seemed to be protecting him. I had to sue my own family to get back into my own home. If you've ever felt betrayed like this, or if you just can't believe where this is going, hit that subscribe button because you need to hear how I fought back. Deciding to hire a lawyer was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It felt like admitting defeat, a formal declaration that my relationship with my brother was broken beyond repair. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, was professional and kind, but his words were chilling. He laid out the process, and it was a bureaucratic nightmare. It's called an unlawful detainer action, a legal process to remove someone who has no right to be on the property. First step, serve David with an official written notice to vacate. I had to pay a professional process server to walk up to my own front door and hand my brother a piece of paper that said, "Get out of my house." I felt sick. I called my parents to tell them what was happening, hoping for backup. Instead, I got a flood of, "Are you sure? He's your brother. Can't you just let him stay a little longer? This will tear the family apart." They didn't get it. It wasn't about letting him stay. It was about the violation, the total shattering of trust. They were trying to keep the peace, but what they were really asking me to do was set myself on fire to keep my brother warm. The day the notice was served, I sat in my car down the street, watching. I saw the server walk up the path. I saw David answer the door, a confused look on his face. I saw him take the papers, read them, and then look up, his eyes scanning the street. He didn't look ashamed. He looked furious. He slammed the door, and I knew this was just the beginning. The notice gave him 30 days to leave. An entire month. He stayed in my house, sleeping in my bed, eating my food, knowing I was taking legal action against him. The lawyer's fees started piling up. Court filing fees, the server's cost, hourly consultations. It was all draining the very savings I'd worked so hard to build. Of course, David didn't leave after 30 days. So Mr. Harrison filed the lawsuit. A court date was set. In response, my brother hired his own lawyer, some cheap, aggressive guy who specialized in fighting evictions. They filed a response filled with the most outrageous lies. They claimed I had made a verbal agreement to let him and his girlfriend live there rent-free for a year. They claimed he had made improvements to the property, the soundproofing foam and the TV mount, and was therefore entitled to stay. It was pure fiction designed to do one thing: delay. The emotional toll was immense. I was barely sleeping. My work was suffering. Every day was a fresh wave of anxiety and anger. I felt so alone. My friends were supportive, but they couldn't understand the specific pain of being betrayed by your own blood. It felt like a knife twisting in my back, and the hand on the handle was my brother's. Finally, after 2 more agonizing months, our court date arrived. I put on my best suit, feeling like a kid playing dress-up. Walking into that sterile courtroom was one of the most surreal moments of my life. On one side, me and my lawyer. On the other, just 50 feet away, sat David and his lawyer. He wouldn't look at me. He just stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. Mr. Harrison presented our case simply and clearly. He showed the deed to the house. He presented the texts and emails I had sent David, begging him to leave. Then he put me on the stand. Sitting there, under oath, I looked at the judge, a woman with tired, intelligent eyes. I told my story. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it shook when I described the shock of walking into my trashed home. I explained that I had only ever wanted to help my brother and that he had used my trust against me. Then it was David's turn. His lawyer had him paint a picture of a poor, struggling young man taken in by his wealthy brother, only to be cruelly tossed aside. David lied under oath. He repeated the story about the verbal agreement, adding little details to make it sound believable. He talked about how he was just trying to build a stable life. He was performing and he was good at it. For one terrifying moment, I saw a flicker of doubt in the judge's eyes. I thought, can he really get away with this? Can you really steal a house with a good story? Then Mr. Harrison began his cross-examination. He was calm, methodical. Mr. My last name? He began. You claim your brother offered you the house for a year. Is there any written proof? An email? A text? No, David said. It was a verbal agreement. A family thing. A family thing, Mr. Harrison repeated. And in this family thing, did you pay your brother any rent? Contribute to the mortgage? The property taxes? No, that wasn't the deal. So your brother, who worked 15 years to afford this $450,000 home, just decided to give it to you for free for a full year and simply forgot to mention it to anyone or write it down. David started to squirm. He's got plenty of money. He wanted to help me out. It went on like that for 20 minutes. With every question, David's story unraveled. The lies became more obvious, his attitude more defensive. The final nail in the coffin was when Mr. Harrison presented the photos I had taken the day I got back. The clothes everywhere, the trashed living room, my life packed up in boxes. Does this look like a home being treated like a temple, as you promised your brother it would be? Mr. Harrison asked. David had no answer. The judge listened to everything, her face unreadable. After both sides rested, she paused, reviewing her notes. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. My entire life felt like it was hanging in that silence. Finally, she looked up, first at David, then at me. Her voice was firm. The evidence is overwhelmingly clear. The defendant, David, my last name, has been residing on the property without a valid lease or legal right. The claim of a verbal agreement is not credible. This is a straightforward case of an unauthorized occupant. She banged her gavel. Judgment is awarded to the plaintiff. A writ of possession will be issued. The defendant and any other occupants have 72 hours to vacate the premises. A wave of relief so powerful it almost knocked me over washed through me. I had won. But it didn't feel like a victory. I just felt empty. I had just won a legal battle to throw my own brother out of my house. The court order didn't magically fix everything. David, true to form, dragged it out to the last possible second. For 3 days, he and his girlfriend stayed in the house, a final act of defiance. On the last day, I had to have a sheriff's deputy there to enforce the eviction. Watching my brother carry boxes out of my house under the watchful eye of a cop is an image that will be burned into my memory forever. He didn't speak to me. He didn't even look at me. The only time he did as he got into his car was to give me a look of pure, raw hatred. And then he was gone. I walked back into my house. The silence was jarring. It was also filthy. They had left trash everywhere, scuff marks on the walls, a huge stain on the living room carpet. It was like they had tried to physically scar the house on their way out. The next few weeks were a blur of cleaning and reclaiming. I scrubbed every surface. I repainted the walls, covering the ghosts of their tapestries. I slowly, carefully unpacked my own life, putting my books back on the shelves, my art back on the walls. With every object I put back in its place, it felt like I was piecing myself back together. Slowly, the house started to feel like mine again. But it's different now. It's no longer just a symbol of my hard work. It's a symbol of my resilience. I haven't spoken to my brother since that day. I hear things through my parents who are still heartbroken over it all. He and Sarah broke up. He's living on a friend's couch, right back in the same cycle he's always been in. Sometimes I feel a pang of guilt, but then I remember the coldness in his eyes in that courtroom. I remember the total violation of my trust. This whole nightmare taught me a painful but necessary lesson. Sometimes the people you love are the ones who can hurt you the most. And sometimes family isn't about blood, it's about respect. I learned that my peace is worth fighting for, that my boundaries are not negotiable, and that I am so much stronger than I ever thought. I had to go through hell to get my home back, but in the process I found a new respect for myself. And that's a foundation no one can ever steal. This was, without a doubt, the hardest chapter of my life, and it taught me so much about trust, family, and betrayal. I know I can't be the only one who's been through something like this. If you have a story about betrayal by a family member, share it in the comments below. Let's talk about it, because sometimes just knowing you're not alone is the first step to healing. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about overcoming life's craziest challenges. Thank you for listening.